Well, it was Caitlin Foord's night at Meadow Park. Daisy, you were watching on. I was there in the press box. It was a long day at Meadow Park. I enjoyed two games, 10 goals, a penalty shootout, and just about everything, but a comprehensive win for Arsenal in the end, Daisy. And it's a night that belonged to the one and only Caitlin Foord. Four goals. I don't think I've seen a player score four goals in quite a few years now, and that was against my team. So it was quite good fun to be on the right end of it last night. How was it for you watching on?
Yeah, really, really good. Wish I could have been there, but great to be able to be back watching Arsenal in pre-season just isn't the same, is it? When you want those competitive fixtures. And saying that with the four goals, it's been a while since we've seen Caitlin Foord specifically, getting herself on the score sheet and getting multiple goals. I know there's this narrative of maybe she had a point to prove. Obviously, Mariona's come into this side. You've got Beth Mead, who's obviously injured at the moment, but would be coming back into it. And there's obviously competition. I discussed this a lot when I was writing about it. There's obviously competition for places in every single position, which is just shows the team that Jonas is trying to build, but specifically in that left wing position. And then seeing that Mariona and Ford can play together and consistently swap wings and still both, contribute so much to the game. I think that was huge, really.
I was talking to Finley Chung, who's a friend of both of ours, another journalist, and we were saying, isn't it mad that you can put a right footer on the right wing and everyone goes, she's out of position, we can't be doing this, she's going to struggle. Actually, enough of this modern football. Get a player in a normal position. What happens? They go up and score four goals. But it is a sign of modern football, isn't it? That all this inverted wingers and everything. Sometimes you put a player in a bit more of just a natural position where they can play a bit more raw, they can get into the box, they'll be looking for the goal instead of every time trying to cut in onto their right foot, make decisions. That decision making is almost taken away from you. It's get in the box, get on the end of these crosses, and play like a bit of a second striker, and that's exactly what she did last night.
Yeah, definitely. I think positioning wise, we talked about this a lot, haven't we, with Russo, being in the box a little bit more. And we talked about Beth Mead as well, sort of floating in toward the end of last season. I think that was a way that Arsenal were trying to score more goals and create more chances in general. But we hadn't seen too much of that from Ford. There was that over reliance, I think, on her doing a lot of the running on the wing, trying to take players on. We've obviously brought in Mariona Caldentey and she's obviously started to do that a bit more, which gives, I think, Ford that freedom to float in and be there because we know she can score the goals. Apart from that one where she was, I think twice she was in front of the goal, somehow, didn't get it in the back of the net, but then could hit that on the volley. I think that just, sums it up really, doesn't it, for what it's been like for Arsenal as well. And obviously the first half we didn't quite create as many chances as we would have liked, and everybody was sort of a bit disheartened. And then all of a sudden, I think the floodgates just opened really. And I think, with Caitlin Foord, she has that about her where she's got, the goal scoring ability. She can also run at players. And I actually think Emma Burns said it on commentary as well. I actually think we should have been playing her on the right a long time ago. But that's difficult when you've got players like Beth Mead who are constantly, pushing you for competition. And we've often just seen Beth Mead naturally placed in that right wing. And I think it's something Jonas is going to have to look into, being able to play players on either wing and especially with Mariona as well. That's going to be huge, for Arsenal in creating those chances and winning games.
They did swap at times. There was a 5 minute maybe where Caldente went into the 10, Marnham went out to the left wing, and Ford stayed on the right. But it really did dawn on me actually how when players are on opposite side of the pitch, we talk about players if they're next to each other, sort of in that formation. We talk about building the relationship and how important that is. But it's actually really hit me last night, and that even if you're on completely opposite sides of the pitch, you still need to have understanding with that opposite winger. And obviously, when they're deciding when to swap and how to attack defenders and create problems. That's not a manager call a lot of the time. That's the players out there being trusted to, take ownership, decide which side they want to play on. But it was great to see, her build that relationship with Caldente and actually to have two wingers working in tandem to score goals. It's not something we often talk about, but the service into Ford, she wouldn't have scored the four goals without the quality of the likes of Caldente.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about that a lot when they were building on tactics last season, the idea of trying to build those relationships. We talked about it with Russo and Blackstenius when obviously we were all begging for that decision to be made to play them together. And I saw that with Marnham a lot. Thought there was a lot to Marnham's play that I really enjoyed. And then we talked to the Southampton game after that about, how clinical she was. Maybe she could finish more chances. And then obviously you've got Rosa Kafaj who's coming in who can also play in that number 10 position. The fluidity of the attack, being able to swap, at different positions, to read the game. And that's what Arsenal really did when they couldn't just quite create those actual goal scoring chances. They need to take it from just getting in the box and getting, having a lot of the ball to actually getting to take shots on target and score those goals. I also thought, midfield, that's so much part of the attack. Kim Little specifically, she's always been quite somehow I think the ball is just glued to her feet sometimes. She just cannot lose that ball. And in that actually created a chance. I think it was for Ford's second goal. So, things like that are going to be huge for Arsenal as well, not having Pullover in that midfield. Can those other players step up? And I thought that midfield partnership is it did really well yesterday, and it seems to be growing quite quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you can add Marnham into that as just the real engine room last night. I thought sort of Arsenal constantly outran Rangers every time. The Scottish side got back on the ball. The relentless pressing just made it so hard for them to get out of their own half. And I've got to say, I sidelined Laia Kadina for praise last night because I thought every time Rangers broke forward, they were going long, they were going direct. And her physicality, which a lot of the time for a player like her, you have to control. You can't lose your head. You can't give that away because if you're one on one with a player and you make that wrong decision to bring them down, then obviously you're in trouble. But I thought she really was well measured last night. She read the game really well and she just stopped Rangers breaking. And in the end, Manu Zinsberger didn't face a shot on goal at all. So obviously, as good as the attack were, having just a solid defence and a midfield who wanted to win the ball back, that will really please Jonas Eidevall as well when you're looking ahead to Man City and teams like that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got to build that strong, back line. We've got to, those partnerships are just as important between the centre backs, between the full backs, between the full back and the winger. It's all over the pitch, and obviously there's some competition, like I said earlier, for those places. We saw what Lotte Wubben-Moy can do in that position. Player of the season last year. Obviously, she's coming back and trying to get in that team again after injury. So I think Laia Kadina didn't get quite as many minutes as she would have liked last season. That's just naturally because other players played there and when they're doing well you can't just take them out, but I do really think this is the season where she could push. You've got the likes of Katie Reid that didn't play last night that we've obviously had a fantastic pre-season and we'll get, probably talk about her a lot as well. So I do think it's going to be tough to get in that side, but it's so important. Obviously, you've got Emily Fox, who I also thought is always has a good performance and is really going to start building up those relationships, with the winger and how can we get, McCabe and Ford who are on opposite wings at the time to link up like that. So that's without even mentioning Leah Williamson coming back in. And I thought her
Yeah.
passing range, we talk about it all the time, but it is insane. She can step
And
into that
crosses in.
midfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, she can cross the ball from, she finds the pockets of space, and that's something that obviously Arsenal have tried to do a lot yesterday. They couldn't quite do it in the first half, but second half the space opened up, and if anyone's going to exploit the space for a pass, it's going to be Leah Williamson, that's for sure.
Look, Rangers 1-0 down for 59 minutes. I think actually before we talk about the Arsenal thrashing of them really and the overall result, I would like to give them a little bit of credit for staying in the game for that long, especially after going 1-0 down. They had sort of just started to play their football when Ford sort of stooped for that header at the back post. The moment that killed them was when the footballing gods decided when the goalkeeper was taking a goal kick and the referee actually said, look, hurry up a bit. Maybe she thought she was time wasting. Some people will feel she was, some people maybe not. But just as karma is, Arsenal then go and score two goals in less than 2 minutes. It was almost a bit of a sign of Rangers. Maybe we're just frustrating Arsenal. They were trying to stay in the game, try and obviously find a way of nicking a goal, being optimistic to try and take it to extra time. And at that point in the game, that was the real turning point. Two goals in 2 minutes. And the second they went in, it was game over.
Yeah, and obviously we saw, Blackstenius and Kafaji coming on, and that kind of made them, feel better about themselves and the work they were doing. I thought they did really well in terms of, there was a defender called Hill that did really well yesterday, and she really, she had it was a tough game for them. It was always going to be, Champions League playing against a tough opponent, obviously the underdogs, but they did hold their own. I do think the one thing that, that made them struggle a little bit was their ability to keep the ball. I know that's easier said than done, but often they were relying on that ball out, to the other side of the field where realistically, they're going to lose the ball straight away. There wasn't that space in behind like there usually is with that Arsenal high back line. They kind of stayed back. Zinsberger sort of stayed and joined that back line. So I think, it was a tough game for them. There was little that they could do when they got the ball, but that's also down to Arsenal, and their press. I thought their pressing was incredible yesterday. They were, relentless and they weren't giving up until they won the ball back. And it's just that case, we've had that complacency with Arsenal recently, haven't we? Where they've gone into those easier games and sort of, took it slow and the tempo's not been as high as we liked. And then looking at the second half, that's exactly the kind of performance you want Arsenal to do, especially against those lower ranked teams as well.
Hmm. Look, let's talk about Mariona Caldentey. I was sort of having a quick Google search before because I would be shocked if she's actually played in the qualification stages of this competition before because of Barcelona's dominance. So this almost would have been a little bit of a step back for her last night, thinking, what is this? We've got to play 4 games to reach the group stage when usually she's at a team that's in the final and winning the final. She's won 3 of them. But I think she's going to be a player who's going to bring her all, whoever she plays against. She was getting involved in a few sort of bust ups and everything. She was not taking any nonsense. She had a similar sort of that sort of fiery Spanish attitude that I saw a bit of in the Atletico game at 12 o'clock. And her and Katie McCabe, every time a bit of trouble started, one of them getting involved and then both of them involved. I think they're going to cause referees a few problems this season. But her will to win, her determination, she just wanted to take the game by the scruff of the neck and make things happen. And look, she is experienced, and she whether she's past the prime of her career, I think that's really up for debate because I think Barcelona would have happily had her for a few more years. The performance she's put in last night, she is going to be one heck of a signing this season.
Definitely, we always say, we don't know what these signings are going to be like. Obviously, we talked hypothetically about the experience that she has in the Champions League, but she really showed that like yesterday, and that's just beyond like, the way that she plays, the assists, the goals. It's the fight that she had, like you said, on the pitch, the willingness to keep going. I thought one of the things was just the fact that she would just drive with the ball. She wasn't worried about losing the ball, and that's something that Arsenal struggled with a lot, in recent seasons, not taking that risk, not, trying to take players on. And I think we talked about that is one of her strengths. Obviously, her speed. I mean, there was a time when the ball nearly went out and somehow she got past and retrieved it. So that's something that I think when you're talking about, being past her prime, she's still got the athleticism, she's still got
Yeah.
the speed and the determination to get past players. And I feel like it's something that Arsenal have lacked. And it also opens up, like I said, the opportunity for players like Russo, Foord, Mead, even if she comes back in at times, to be, in the box in the right positions, and Mariona to do a lot of the work on the wing where that clearly is her strength, but also she can cut inside it. And she wasn't scared to have a go at goal as well. And same with Kafaji. We saw her take a shot when the goalkeeper was out of position. So it's those kind of players that Arsenal have obviously recruited on purpose. It's that type of, drive that we haven't had in a while, and maybe we've been lacking a little bit in the squad.
Yeah, and she's obviously got that drive where she said, "I've won it all with Barcelona. I'm going to go somewhere else." And when I talk about playing her having to play these qualifiers, it's almost a sign that yeah, she's coming to a club that want to win the Champions League and have got to do it the hard way. Jonas Eidevall told me on Saturday he thinks this round of qualifying is the most difficult part of the competition until you get all the way to the final because it's 90 minutes or 120 minutes or penalties and you're out. And I was at Atletico v Rosenborg, and there were Atletico players in tears after they lost the penalty shootout because you have these Champions League dreams. It only takes 1 game, and you're out. And we obviously found that out last season, and that's why Arsenal put out such a strong team last night. And like you say, they brought on people like Kafaji, who so nearly lobbed the goalkeeper right before full time, which would have just been ridiculous. And I wonder what changes they make on Saturday as well, because it's a bit of a tight turnaround. Obviously, Rosenborg had to play all the way through to penalties, so they'll be tied certainly this morning. Do you think Arsenal will change much? Because they're going to have to go as full on as they can again, because as we say, it's 90 minutes and you're out.
Yeah, I think, we've seen what Jonas Eidevall's like with his team selections. He does tend, if it goes well, to stick with m most of the players. I would be interested to see, obviously, the fitness of Beth Mead and Steph Catley. If you've got this strong starting 11 that worked for you like it did against Rangers, there's no point rushing players back. There's no point rushing Lotta Moy back, for example. I am interested to see sort of how those players who we know, are really, really good and are pushing for those starting positions, like Stina Blacksenius, Rosa Kafaji. We saw Lara Wienreuter driving into the box, and she could have won a penalty, I think, if that shot hadn't got away. So it's those players that I think will be an interesting challenge for Jonas to see, are they going to be impact players? What is he going to do about sort of Frida Maanum? He really seems to be sure that she's got the potential to start in that number 10 position, but there will be players that will be pushing and knocking on the door, and I think that's interesting, and it's also a good problem to have, isn't it? You mentioned this. that when we talked about Lacasse leaving, it seems like he's willing to, do what it takes to build that world-class squad. I was watching it and I was just thinking, Emily Fox, Katie McKay, Leah Williamson, we really are at that point now where this is probably one of the strongest squads that we've got. Maybe that's a bold statement to make
Yeah.
before the season's even started, but there's no denying the talent's been brought in. Recruitment has been made. We hadn't even talked about Daphne Van Domselaar, obviously coming back from injury and hasn't really played. She hasn't played at all for Arsenal yet, so he's not going to rush her back. But it will be interesting to see how that sort of shapes up as the season starts and as she comes back to full fitness. With Manu Zinsberger as well, sort of having not really. She's had somewhat good performances, but obviously little to do in that Rangers game.
Yeah, Jonas obviously in charge for over 3 years now, and it just dawned to me last night. Do you think this is the strongest squad he's had at his disposal in terms of depth, but also the quality of that depth? Because I think he might well have it now. And I know people talk about Miedemar leaving and maybe previous sides, but in his first season, I don't think, you look at that team that obviously lost to Birmingham City. I don't think it had the depth at all. Second season, obviously, we had so many injuries and the depth was then called upon, but it's certainly not the depth in quality that we have now. And even though it has taken him 3 years of recruitment, I feel like this is the strongest Jonas side of our squad that we've seen.
Yeah, this appears to be the squad that he wants as well. I think obviously he's heavily involved in recruitment. You can tell that with the players that he's brought in that have, we might have criticised if he hadn't brought in players like Mariona and Kafashi, who are obviously addressing the issues that we've had in recent seasons. Last season was tough because, like you say, players coming back from injury, they can't be integrated into the squad in pre-season or during the first however many months of the season. So I think that plays into it. It seemed like the squad that we had out yesterday, the starting 11, had already sort of started to build those relationships. Like they hadn't played together that much in comparison to potential, obviously players that had played together before. But I think you've got, Russo has had a full season at Arsenal now as well. She's settled into that side. Fox has had half of the season, obviously coming in January. So those players, the new players seem to be integrated in quite well. And also you've got those players who have played together for a while who are now comfortable. I think the main thing for Jonas, he has got that squad depth. It's just managing those minutes, managing injuries, which we know can soon, take your season from one thing to another. So fingers crossed, everybody can stay as fully fit. And then obviously when you come back in and see how Palova fits into this side, when she does, obviously no rush come back from injury, we do have an extremely, really, 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 really good squad. And I saw Leah Volti as well yesterday coming back. So it really is crazy. The more you think about it, the more players you think, oh yeah, we have them back and we can integrate them into the starting 11 as well.
Yeah, it's the sort of squad that if it's deprived of Champions League football, rotation will become a whole lot harder, and that's why this competition is so important. Well, Arsenal will take on Norwegian side Rosenborg on Saturday evening. Daisy, you're going down to Meadow Park, and I was there yesterday, a dramatic game to see them beat Atletico Madrid. I had one Arsenal fan come up to me at full time yesterday after our game against Rangers, and she said, "Bet you're tired after those two," and I was like, "I am." Absolutely shattered, but we were treated yesterday. Two great games of football. Atletico held to a 1-all draw, 91st minute equaliser by Rosenborg substitute Rebecca van Beek Holm. If I butcher any of these Norwegian pronunciations, I can only apologise. And then Rosenborg going 2-1 up in extra time. They seemed to get more and more tired as the game went on, but it was a real game of set pieces. Atletico Madrid really dropped off after Fiamma put them in front in the 21st minute. Gio missed a couple of one-on-ones. One was just wide of the far post. One she struck it straight at the goalkeeper. They should have been 3-0 up, Daisy, sort of after 50 minutes, but then they let Rosenborg back into the game. Atleti then equalised again in the 120th minute with like a goal line scramble that just trickled over the line. And then Rosenborg goalkeeper Rulite saved two penalties, and then the crucial one was blasted over by their left back Medina. And yeah, a brilliant game of football and a sign of just how small the margins can be at this stage of qualification. But it's obviously a big scalp for Rosenborg, knocking out a team like Atletico Madrid.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, credit to Rosenborg for the performance that they put in and the effort to fight back. But obviously, you do feel for Atletico Madrid. Obviously, they could have taken their chances. We were in that position last season as well. So it is a really tough competition. There's no denying that. Hopefully, not a sign of what's to come on Saturday. I don't want a 2-2 go into a penalty and somebody blasting it over, please. So can we avoid that at all costs? I want another 6-0. Obviously, it's not going to be 6-0, but come back to this if it's 6-0. But I feel like we do want to sort of, I think the clean sheet was huge as well. I know we're talking about Rangers and that's not discredit to them, but the clean sheet is huge for us and we have struggled with that. We didn't keep it, in the pre-season games against Washington Spirit and Chelsea. I feel like the defensive work is just like you said, it's just as important as the attacking side. That's something that Arsenal have to perfect if they don't want to concede silly goals and miss out on vital points. That's in the Champions League and in the WSL, even in cup competitions as well, where, like you say, one mistake and you're out of these competitions. I think this is going to be huge. How Arsenal manage those big games and how we manage Saturday, I just can't wait to be there as well. Obviously, Boreham Wood, the atmosphere, in the North Bank is amazing. So really excited to see how they get on. And obviously, I don't think Arsenal are going to take the foot. I also thought they could go up a gear as well. Did you not think that in yesterday's
Yeah.
game? They seemed to sort of have that, and we saw it in the second half. They scored a ton of goals, but I still think there was more. At times, they could have had more chances. They could have taken them. Stina had a few since coming on. So if they can go up a gear again against Rosenborg, it's going to be a really tough game for the Norwegian side to master, really.
It does make me think actually when you have some of these slightly, unfairly weighted, if you like, matchups, that it is maybe a good thing that these are 90-minute games. Because if Arsenal were going up to Glasgow on Saturday 6-0 up, it's just there's no point, for games like
Yeah.
that. Actually, that's where some of the 90-minute games help, and they just bring a little bit more jeopardy, a little bit more excitement around these. And obviously, Arsenal have, I think it is still a massive benefit to have these games at Meadow Park. It was sold out last night, 3,500 people there, really, really good atmosphere. And yeah, Rosenborg will be another test, tougher than Rangers, I'd expect. And they were really, really well organised, a rigid sort of 4-2-3-1 that they were sort of dropping into a 4-5-1 at times and really just camping on the edge of the box. And it will be a low block. They'll cause problems with set pieces when they get up the field, and it'll be another interesting matchup. And yeah, the winner of that will then go through to the next round of qualifying. That's a two-leg game, home and away, a nice little European trip, fingers crossed. And then win that on aggregate, and you're through to the group stage. It is a long process, but there's been no complaints for Arsenal this year. There's been no sort of moaning about the qualification process, if it's unfair. They've almost accepted, actually, we're into this mess because we should have done better in the WSL, and now we've got to get out of it. We've got to get through to the group stage, and if we don't, we all know what the consequences will be, and they started it perfectly last night.
Absolutely. I liked Jonas's, in the press conference saying, ask Manchester City if you want to know how
Yeah.
tough this is. And that is the truth. Manchester City finishing, second in one of the top divisions in the
Yeah.
entire world. It is tough. We can't change it right now. We can't complain about it. I don't think by any means, we saw Caitlin Foord's after the post match, she was saying, we're not taking the foot off the pedal at all. We're completely going for it, and they're not sort of taking for granted, results that they should be getting. They're putting in the performance, and I don't think that'll be any different on Saturday. I'm really excited to see if they continue, in the good form that they are, and we'll see who we draw in that two-legged tie. It could be a tough matchup. There's no doubt about that. I'm pretty sure we can't draw Manchester City, can we? You can't play an English club.
Yeah, but it could be a team like I think Wolfsburg, Roma, Real Madrid. I think I read earlier. It can't be a champion because they're in the Champions Pass, so it can't be a champion of one of like the lesser ranked leagues, but it can be a second or a third place, which, as we know, like you mentioned, Man City, and it can be a really tough one. But hopefully, Arsenal will do the job on Saturday first before we get carried away, and look forward to seeing you there at Meadow Park.
Yeah, I can't wait to be there. I'm really hoping for an exciting game, and yeah, we'll see who else can impress us. Will it be Caitlin Foord again, or will there be another, surprise person in there who does really well? So it's going to be a really good game, tough test, really, in terms of what we had with Rangers. But I do think Arsenal will come out on top, and yeah, I can't wait.